To see what others do not see is both a gift and a curse, a power that carries with it great peril. For those who dare to pierce the veil of common perception often find themselves ensnared in webs of suspicion, misunderstanding, and envy. The eyes that look beyond the surface are burdened not only with knowledge, but with the weight of isolation. The multitude fears what they cannot grasp, and those who reveal hidden truths risk becoming enemies to the very world they seek to enlighten. It is a dangerous enterprise to wield vision that others lack, for in this endeavor lies the threat of alienation. The wise man, who discerns the shifting winds before they touch the shores of the unknowing, must tread carefully. His revelations may provoke unrest or invite the wrath of those invested in ignorance. To expose the unseen is to challenge the foundations upon which many rely. It is to upset the fragile balance of comfort in illusion. Yet, to remain blind like the many is no refuge. To live in ignorance is to be at the mercy of fortune's caprices, unable to prepare for the storms ahead. The prudent must find a path between silence and disclosure, wielding insight as a weapon and a shield. Discretion must accompany wisdom. For the sharpest blade is useless if it cuts the hand that wields it. There is also a peril in the pride of vision, believing oneself the sole bearer of truth. Such arrogance blinds the seer to his own errors and leaves him vulnerable to downfall. The danger is not only in seeing what others do not, but in mistaking the shadows for substance. True insight demands humility and the recognition that the unknown is vast and often impenetrable. Therefore, the danger of seeing what others do not lies not merely in the act of perception, but in the consequences it brings. It is a dangerous gift that can elevate or destroy, illuminate or isolate. The wise must balance vision with prudence, truth with tact, and courage with caution, lest their sight become their undoing. To see beyond common perception is a power that few possess, and even fewer know how to wield wisely. Those who possess such vision are often set apart from the rest, not merely by their knowledge, but by the burden that knowledge carries. When a person perceives what others fail to see, whether it be the true nature of people, the shifting tides of political power, or the undercurrents of society, they enter a realm that is both enlightening and isolating. The masses tend to cling to familiar narratives and comfortable illusions because these stories sustain their sense of order and security. When confronted by someone who challenges these illusions by revealing what lies beneath the surface, the reaction is frequently one of fear, suspicion, and hostility. The act of perceiving beyond the ordinary disrupts the equilibrium that people depend on. Most men are not inclined to question the world as it is presented to them. They prefer the ease of accepted truths over the labor of inquiry. To see otherwise is to stand apart from the crowd, and standing apart is dangerous. It makes one vulnerable to accusations of heresy, madness, or betrayal. The collective mind is quick to reject what threatens its consensus, labeling the seer as an outsider or a threat. This exclusion is not accidental, but a natural defense mechanism against upheaval and uncertainty. Furthermore, those who see differently often find themselves misunderstood. Their insights are not always welcomed because they force others to confront inconvenient realities. For instance, in matters of governance or strategy, the individual who discerns the weaknesses of a seemingly stable regime may be branded a pessimist or a troublemaker. The populace prefers to believe in the stability of their rulers and the permanence of their institutions. To suggest otherwise is to sow seeds of doubt and fear leads to resistance. Thus, the visionary becomes an object of suspicion rather than admiration, even when their intentions are to safeguard or improve the state. The danger extends beyond social rejection to active hostility. Envy often accompanies suspicion. The seer's ability to grasp truths hidden from others may inspire jealousy among peers who lack such vision. This envy can quickly turn to malice, as those threatened seek to undermine or silence the one who sees more clearly. In political contexts, this is especially perilous. Courts and councils are rife with intrigue precisely because individuals vie for power and influence. To possess insight is to possess power, but it is also to become a target. The more one knows, the more enemies one may make. Isolation follows naturally from these dynamics. The seer finds few who truly understand or appreciate the depth of his vision. Those around him may nod politely, but harbor doubts or resentment. Genuine allies are scarce, for few are willing or able to share the burden of seeing beyond the surface. This loneliness can weigh heavily on the individual, breeding despair or paranoia. The visionary must cultivate resilience, for the path of insight is not cushioned by the comfort of popular approval. This isolation is compounded by the internal conflict that vision engenders. To see clearly is to witness not only the potential for greatness, but also the seeds of destruction within the same. The world is rarely as simple as it appears, and the truths hidden beneath common perception are often uncomfortable or even tragic. The seer must reconcile the clarity of his vision with the complexity and messiness of reality. This requires a strong character and a keen mind, lest the burden of knowledge become overwhelming. Moreover, the danger of isolation is not merely social or emotional, but also intellectual. Without dialogue and debate, vision risks stagnation. When surrounded by those who cannot see as one does, the seer may find it difficult to refine or test his insights. Confirmation bias may take root, and the danger arises that the visionary will become detached from reality, locked within his own perspective. True wisdom requires engagement with others, even if they initially fail to grasp the depth of the insight offered. The broader consequence of this isolation is the potential loss of influence. No matter how profound one's vision, it remains powerless if it cannot be communicated and accepted by others. The ability to persuade and lead is as important as the insight itself. A man who sees what others do not must also master the art of presentation, of framing his truths in ways that do not provoke immediate rejection. This is a delicate balance, too blunt, and the message is dismissed or attacked, too cautious, and the message loses its urgency and impact. Thus, the burden of seeing what others do not is not only to perceive, but also to navigate the complex terrain of human nature and society. The visionary must understand the fears and desires of those who resist change. He must temper his revelations with prudence and patience, gradually guiding others to perceive new realities without overwhelming them. This skill separates the true leader from the mere prophet. It is not enough to see the truth. One must also shepherd others toward it. History offers many examples where those who saw beyond common perception were either celebrated or destroyed. The pattern is often the same: initial resistance, followed by grudging acceptance, and sometimes eventual reverence, but often only after great personal cost to the seer. This underscores the inherent danger in possessing such vision. It is a double-edged sword that cuts through ignorance, but may also sever social bonds and personal safety. In conclusion, to see beyond common perception is to occupy a lonely and precarious position. The insight gained sets one apart, engendering fear, suspicion, and envy from those who cling to familiar illusions. The visionary must navigate this treacherous landscape with wisdom, humility, and tact. Without such qualities, the danger of isolation and downfall looms large. The gift of extraordinary sight is not simply a blessing, but a burden that demands strength and prudence in equal measure. To reveal hidden truths is to unsettle the foundations upon which people build their understanding of the world and themselves. Such revelations, no matter how necessary or just, carry with them an inherent risk of provoking unrest. This danger arises from the discomfort that accompanies the disruption of long-held beliefs and the challenge posed to established power structures. When truths that have been concealed or ignored come to light, they threaten not only ideas, but also the interests and privileges of those who benefit from maintaining the status quo. Therefore, exposing what is hidden is a perilous act that can ignite resistance, resentment, and even rebellion. The first cause of unrest is psychological. Human beings are creatures of habit and comfort, clinging to the familiar even when it is flawed or unjust. They construct narratives that give order and meaning to their lives. These narratives, whether political, social, or personal, form a kind of collective agreement, a pact of understanding that allows society to function smoothly. When a hidden truth disrupts this pact, it shatters the illusion of stability. People feel threatened because their sense of identity and security is challenged. The revelation demands a reevaluation of beliefs, and with that comes uncertainty and fear. Fear is a powerful force that drives people to resist change. It compels them to reject the messenger who brings uncomfortable news, often accusing him of malice or deceit. This reaction is natural but dangerous, for it prevents growth and progress. The unrest that follows is not always violent or overt. It can manifest as gossip, suspicion, or subtle undermining of the one who dares to reveal the truth. The reaction may escalate if the truth concerns matters of governance or justice, as those in power feel their authority challenged and their legitimacy questioned. In political realms, the danger of revealing hidden truths is especially acute. Rulers and those who hold power often rely on carefully constructed images and narratives to maintain control. These narratives obscure inconvenient facts, conceal corruption, or justify oppression. When an individual exposes these realities, the effect is destabilizing. The exposed rulers fear losing their grip on power and may respond with repression or manipulation. The populace, confronted with betrayal, may feel betrayed and disillusioned, and this can lead to unrest, protests, or even revolution. The exposure of hidden truths can also create divisions within society. People respond differently to revelations based on their interests, beliefs, and social positions. Some may welcome the truth as a means to justice and reform, while others cling to denial to protect their privileges or comfort. These opposing reactions deepen conflicts, sow discord, and fracture communities. The revelation of uncomfortable facts becomes a catalyst for factionalism, as groups align themselves for or against the newfound knowledge. The resulting unrest can weaken social cohesion and create a climate of suspicion and hostility. Another dimension of this danger lies in the manner of revelation. The way a hidden truth is disclosed affects the reaction it provokes. A harsh, abrupt unveiling can shock and alienate, while a gradual, thoughtful approach may allow for adjustment and acceptance. The bearer of truth must understand the human capacity for change and recognize that timing and tact are crucial. Without sensitivity, the messenger risks being perceived as a provocateur rather than a liberator, inflaming tensions rather than calming them. The motives attributed to the revealer also influence the unrest that follows. If the person revealing the truth is seen as self-serving or vindictive, the backlash is intensified. Conversely, if the motives are understood as genuine and aimed at the common good, the resistance may soften. Nonetheless, even the most well-intentioned revelations can provoke hostility if they threaten powerful interests or disturb deeply held convictions. This complexity demands wisdom in not only discerning what truths must be revealed but how and when to do so. In many instances, the unrest provoked by revealing hidden truths can be a necessary stage in transformation and renewal. Unrest, while unsettling, can break the complacency that allows injustice or corruption to persist. It can mobilize people to demand accountability and reform. However, this process is fraught with danger because it often invites violent conflict and instability. The transition from ignorance or denial to awareness and action is rarely smooth or painless. It requires leadership capable of guiding the unrest toward constructive ends rather than destruction or chaos. The danger is magnified by the potential for misinformation and manipulation. Once a hidden truth is revealed, it can be distorted by opposing factions seeking to exploit the unrest for their own gain. The initial revelation may become a tool in broader struggles for power, twisting the narrative and deepening divisions. This dynamic complicates efforts to achieve genuine reform and reconciliation, as the truth itself becomes entangled in conflict. Moreover, those who reveal hidden truths often pay a heavy personal price. They may face persecution, exile, or worse. Their reputations can be tarnished and their lives endangered. The danger is not abstract but immediate and tangible. The courage required to expose what others wish to conceal is considerable, for the consequences can be severe. This reality tempers the impulse to reveal every hidden fact and forces a careful calculation of risk and reward. Despite these dangers, the revelation of hidden truths remains a vital function in any society seeking justice and progress. The concealment of reality fosters corruption, injustice, and stagnation. Only through illumination can wrongs be addressed and paths to improvement found. Yet, the process demands patience, strategy, and an understanding of human nature. The danger of provoking unrest must be balanced against the necessity of truth. In essence, the act of revealing hidden truths is a double-edged sword. It can enlighten and liberate, but it can also destabilize and divide. The unrest that follows is a natural response to the challenge posed to entrenched interests and comfortable beliefs. Managing this unrest requires skillful leadership and a careful approach that respects the fears and hopes of those affected. Without such care, the noble pursuit of truth may instead sow chaos and destruction. Wisdom, when paired with insight, demands a careful balance between the courage to perceive what others cannot and the prudence to wield such knowledge with discretion. Insight alone, no matter how profound, is insufficient if it is not tempered by a thoughtful consideration of timing, audience, and consequence. The world is a complex place filled with fragile alliances, entrenched beliefs, and unpredictable human reactions. To act upon one's vision without regard for these factors is to court disaster. Therefore, the exercise of wisdom requires not just seeing what others do not but knowing how, when, and to whom to reveal that vision. Discretion is the companion of wisdom because it recognizes the limitations of human nature and society. People are often unwilling or unable to receive truths that conflict with their interests, fears, or prejudices. A wise person understands that the blunt disclosure of uncomfortable facts can provoke hostility and rejection rather than acceptance and change. This awareness does not imply cowardice or deceit, but rather a strategic approach to truth-telling. The wise know that sometimes the most effective way to bring about change is through gradual persuasion and subtle influence, rather than direct confrontation. Timing is a crucial aspect of discretion. Revealing a truth at an inopportune moment can nullify its impact or even backfire, strengthening opposition instead of weakening it. The wise observer gauges the readiness of those around him before unveiling hidden realities. Patience becomes a virtue, as does the ability to endure frustration and delay. There are moments when silence or concealment serves the greater good, allowing conditions to mature so that truths can be received with less resistance. The wise man understands that the success of insight depends not only on the message, but on the moment of delivery. Knowing the audience is equally important. Different people respond to truths in varied ways, shaped by their experiences, values, and ambitions. A wise individual tailors the communication of insight to fit the listener's capacity and disposition. For some, a direct and clear statement may be appropriate. For others, a more diplomatic or symbolic approach may be necessary. This adaptability is not manipulation, but a recognition that effective communication is as much about listening and empathy as it is about speaking. The wise know that the acceptance of insight requires a connection with the audience's mindset and emotions. Wisdom also entails an understanding of the potential consequences of revealing hidden truths. Every disclosure sets in motion a chain of reactions that can be unpredictable and far-reaching. A sudden revelation may spark conflict, unrest, or a loss of trust. The wise man anticipates these outcomes and prepares accordingly. He seeks to mitigate harm and to guide reactions toward constructive ends. This requires foresight and the ability to balance short-term risks against long-term benefits. Discretion thus serves as a safeguard, ensuring that insight is not wasted or weaponized recklessly. The prudent use of knowledge also involves self-control. The temptation to expose truth for personal satisfaction, vengeance, or vanity is a constant danger. The wise man restrains such impulses, recognizing that the manner of disclosure reflects on the messenger as much as on the message. Self-restraint preserves credibility and moral authority, which are essential for influence. Without these, insight becomes noise, easily dismissed or discredited. Therefore, wisdom demands that insight be accompanied by humility and moderation. Moreover, discretion in the use of insight helps to preserve relationships and social harmony. Truth, especially when difficult, can fracture bonds if delivered insensitively. The wise man understands the importance of maintaining alliances and trust, even while challenging falsehoods. He navigates the delicate balance between honesty and diplomacy, ensuring that his revelations do not unnecessarily alienate those whose cooperation may be needed. This careful stewardship of human relations is a hallmark of true wisdom. In matters of power and governance, the balance of insight and discretion is particularly critical. Leaders who reveal too much too soon may provoke resistance and chaos, undermining their own position and the stability of the state. Conversely, leaders who conceal truths entirely risk fostering corruption and decay. The wise ruler, therefore, calibrates his disclosures, revealing enough to maintain order and legitimacy while withholding what might destabilize prematurely. Such prudence is not cowardice but a strategic necessity in the management of power. This balance also applies to personal conduct and decision-making. An individual who perceives the faults and intentions of others must exercise caution in how he acts on this knowledge. Openly exposing weaknesses or conspiracies may provoke retaliation or damage one's reputation. Sometimes it is wiser to use insight silently, influencing events behind the scenes or preparing for a more advantageous moment to act. This subtlety is a sign of mastery over both knowledge and circumstance. Discretion also serves to protect the insight itself. In a world where information is power, premature or careless disclosure can lead to exploitation or manipulation by rivals. The wise man guards his knowledge as a treasure, sharing it only with those who are trustworthy or who have a legitimate need to know. This selective sharing preserves the integrity and effectiveness of insight, preventing it from being diluted or turned against its possessor. Furthermore, the interplay between insight and discretion is not static but dynamic. The wise man continually assesses the shifting context, social, political, and personal, and adjusts his approach accordingly. What was prudent at one moment may become reckless at another, and vice versa. This flexibility requires vigilance and adaptability, qualities that are cultivated through experience and reflection. Wisdom is thus an ongoing process of judgment, not a fixed state of knowing. The relationship between insight and discretion also highlights the difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is the possession of facts or truths, but wisdom is the judicious application of that knowledge. To see what others do not is a form of knowledge. To decide how to act on that vision in a manner that advances one's goals and preserves stability is wisdom. Without this balance, insight can lead to ruin rather than success. Finally, the prudent exercise of insight demands an ethical dimension. The wise man considers not only the practical effects of his revelations, but also the moral implications. Revealing a truth without regard for its impact on innocent parties or societal well-being may be destructive rather than beneficial. Wisdom requires a sense of responsibility, ensuring that insight serves a higher purpose rather than mere curiosity or personal gain. Discretion, then, becomes a moral imperative as much as a strategic one. In all, the balance between insight and discretion is a delicate art that requires self-awareness, empathy, patience, and courage. It is not enough to see what others cannot. One must also understand the human world into which this vision is introduced and navigate it with skill. The wise man knows that knowledge, when unleashed without restraint, can be a weapon of destruction, but when tempered by prudence, it becomes a force for preservation and progress. The possession of vision, the rare ability to perceive truths hidden from the ordinary eye, is a powerful gift. But like all powerful gifts, it carries with it a profound risk. Among the greatest of these dangers is the subtle, creeping pride that often infects the one who sees clearly when others remain blind. To believe oneself uniquely capable of grasping the truth can slowly transform into arrogance, and arrogance is the prelude to ruin. It is not the vision itself that destroys, but the pride it so easily breeds, the intoxicating belief that one's insight makes one infallible, untouchable, or above the need for counsel. Pride in vision arises from the natural contrast between the seer and the masses. When a man consistently sees what others fail to notice, whether in the affairs of state, the character of individuals, or the unfolding of events, it becomes easy for him to think of himself as set apart, superior, even chosen. He begins to place excessive faith in his own judgment and dismisses the views of others as misguided or irrelevant. This pride isolates him not by force, but by choice. He no longer seeks advice or correction because he no longer believes he needs it. This is the beginning of the downfall, for no man, no matter how perceptive, sees everything. Pride blinds because it dulls the sensitivity to contradiction and dissent. The man consumed by the certainty of his own insight becomes deaf to warnings. He sees opposition not as an opportunity to refine his view, but as a sign of ignorance or envy. In doing so, he loses the ability to adapt. He becomes rigid, convinced of the superiority of his path even when reality begins to shift beneath his feet. What once was a strength, his ability to see clearly, becomes a weakness because he no longer questions it. His pride shields him from feedback, and without feedback, error grows unchecked. Moreover, pride in vision often leads to overreach. The man who believes himself uniquely insightful may begin to act recklessly, certain that his foresight will carry him through any danger. He might attempt to impose his vision too quickly or too forcefully on others, expecting immediate compliance with his truths. When resistance arises, as it inevitably does, he interprets it not as a warning, but as proof of others' inferiority. This mindset escalates conflict, isolates him further, and weakens his position. The very people he might need as allies or supporters are alienated by his disdain. There is also a performative element to this pride. The one who sees what others do not may begin to enjoy the attention that comes from being recognized as a visionary. This craving for recognition distorts his motives. Instead of pursuing the truth for its own sake or for the good of others, he begins to perform his insight for praise, to maintain his image of superiority. The truth becomes secondary to the appearance of wisdom. In this way, pride corrupts not only the vision, but the purpose behind it. Another danger lies in the tendency to simplify. The man inflated by his own insight often reduces complex realities into neat conclusions that flatter his perspective. He ignores nuances, dismisses variables, and overlooks signs that his vision might be incomplete. His confidence leaves no room for ambiguity or doubt, yet the world is built on both. The truly wise understand that no matter how far one sees, the horizon always conceals more. Pride rejects this humility and insists on total clarity where none exists. In doing so, it sets the stage for miscalculation. Furthermore, pride in one's vision leads to poor leadership. A leader who believes he alone sees the truth is a danger to those he governs. He resents challenges, suppresses dissent, and surrounds himself with flatterers rather than honest counselors. His rule becomes tyrannical not through cruelty, but through certainty. He does not believe he needs others to guide him because he has already seen the way. But a ruler who listens only to himself walks blind into disaster. His people suffer for his arrogance, and his power, once secure, begins to decay from within. Pride also distorts memory. The proud visionary rewrites the past in his favor, remembering only the times he was right and forgetting the occasions he was wrong. This selective recall reinforces his illusion of infallibility and makes future mistakes more likely. He becomes trapped in a cycle of self-deception, where each success feeds the belief that he cannot fail. But even the most insightful among men are fallible. History punishes those who forget this. Even in solitude, pride takes its toll. The man who sees himself as above others gradually becomes incapable of true intimacy or trust. He doubts the worth of others' opinions, believes few can understand him, and withdraws into his own certainty. Isolation deepens, not because others push him away, but because he cannot bear to be among those he considers blind. This loneliness corrodes the soul, replacing clarity with bitterness and wisdom with contempt. There is also a risk of losing the very vision that once set him apart. Pride clouds the mind, and over time, it becomes harder to distinguish between genuine insight and personal bias. The proud seer begins to see not the world as it is, but the world as he expects it to be. He interprets every event as a confirmation of his beliefs, twisting facts to suit his conclusions. In doing so, he falls into the same blindness he once transcended. The difference is only that his blindness now wears the mask of truth. To guard against this, one must remember that vision is not ownership of the truth, but a responsibility to seek it. The clearer one sees, the more one must question. The more one knows, the more one must doubt. Humility is not the enemy of insight, but its guardian. It keeps vision sharp and rooted in reality. Without humility, even the brightest mind loses its edge and stumbles into darkness, convinced all the while that it walks in light. The most dangerous pride is not loud or boastful, but quiet and inward. It tells a man he is beyond error, that his judgment is pure, that his perspective is complete. It flatters the intellect and deceives the heart. The proud visionary does not fall in an instant. He falls slowly, step by step, led by the very confidence that once lifted him above the crowd. In the end, it is not the blindness of others that undoes him, but his own refusal to see that he too is human. True insight is not simply the ability to see what is hidden from others. It is also the ability to bear that vision with humility and act upon it with cautious courage. To perceive more deeply than others is a rare and powerful gift, but one that comes with weight and responsibility. Insight, if not handled with the proper disposition, can become destructive, not because the truth is harmful in itself, but because of how it is used when it is spoken, and by whom it is revealed. Without humility, insight becomes arrogance. Without courage, it becomes silence. Both are dangerous, and both diminish the power of what could otherwise be a force for good. Humility is essential because insight, by its very nature, separates the seer from the crowd. It can lead to a subtle, almost imperceptible sense of superiority. The one who sees ahead of his time or understands the motivations and movements others miss may begin to believe he is above ordinary judgment. But true insight does not place a man above others. It places him in service to a greater understanding, one that must be approached with reverence and self-awareness. The more clearly one sees, the more necessary it becomes to recognize how much remains unseen. Insight should open the mind, not close it. It should humble the seer with the vastness of what remains unknown, not inflate his pride with what is momentarily known. Humility ensures that the possessor of insight continues to listen, to question, and to doubt. No vision is perfect, and no understanding is complete. A man who believes he has grasped the whole truth, because he sees more than others, will inevitably miss something vital. History is full of brilliant men who fell into ruin because they mistook partial vision for full knowledge. Humility preserves the capacity to learn, to adjust, to admit error. It prevents insight from becoming dogma and allows it to remain a living, evolving understanding of a complex world. This humility must also extend to the way insight is shared. The wise man knows that people are not easily awakened from comfortable illusions. They resist truths that unsettle them, especially when those truths are delivered with condescension or contempt. A humble seer does not seek to shame others for their blindness. He seeks to guide them, gently if possible, firmly if necessary, but never with arrogance. He understands that those who cannot yet see are not necessarily unwilling, but often unready. To speak truth effectively, one must first respect the difficulty others may have in accepting it. At the same time, humility without courage is incomplete. It becomes passivity, and passivity in the face of hard truth is a failure of duty. There are moments when insight demands action, when silence or delay would be more harmful than any risk taken by speaking out. The man who sees clearly must, at times, step forward and bear the consequences of truth-telling. Courage is what allows insight to become more than private wisdom. It makes it a public force. It transforms knowledge into influence and understanding into leadership. Courage, however, must be cautious. Reckless boldness is not courage but vanity masquerading as virtue. Cautious courage weighs the risks, considers the timing, and chooses its battles. It does not rush into conflict for the sake of proving one's bravery or conviction. Instead, it proceeds with strategic awareness. It knows that to speak truth effectively, one must remain standing. Martyrdom for truth may be noble, but it rarely moves the world. Change requires not just clarity and conviction, but also endurance and survival. Cautious courage also recognizes the human cost of revelation. It understands that insight, especially when it disrupts cherished beliefs or power structures, can provoke pain, confusion, and backlash. The wise seer does not unleash truth like a weapon, careless of who it strikes. He releases it as one would release a spark in a dry forest, knowing it could burn, destroy, or purify, depending on how it is managed. He prepares for the consequences, not only for himself but for others who will be affected. This kind of courage is not loud or theatrical. It is quiet, steady, and grounded in responsibility. There is also the personal courage required to live with the burden of insight. To see what others do not is often a lonely condition. It means carrying truths that cannot always be spoken, holding convictions that others do not share, and accepting the isolation that may come with such vision. It requires strength to continue seeing clearly when everyone around you insists that you are wrong. It takes fortitude to resist the temptation to deny your own insight, just to be accepted or left in peace. This form of courage is invisible to the world, but it is the most difficult kind to sustain. Humility and cautious courage are further bound together in the act of leadership. Those who see further have a natural responsibility to guide, but true leadership is not domination. It is stewardship. It is the careful management of vision for the benefit of others, even when they cannot fully understand or appreciate it. This kind of leadership walks the line between firmness and empathy, between authority and compassion. It understands that people must be led at a pace they can endure and in a direction that does not break their will or identity. Such leadership does not seek credit or glory. It does not trumpet its own wisdom. Instead, it allows others to believe they have discovered truth for themselves. The wise leader withholds just enough, nudges just enough, and creates the conditions for insight to spread naturally. He remains in the background when possible, stepping forward only when necessary. This restraint is not cowardice. It is mastery. It reflects a deep understanding of human nature and a commitment to the long-term flourishing of those he seeks to guide. Ultimately, humility and cautious courage are not separate traits, but two expressions of the same principle, the responsible use of insight. To see more is to be entrusted with more. That trust is not a license to dominate or elevate oneself, but a call to serve, to protect, and to guide. The true measure of a seer is not in how much he knows, but in how wisely and bravely he uses what he knows. He does not flaunt his vision, nor does he bury it. He walks a middle path, one of restraint and resolve, of patience and conviction, of humility and cautious courage.